Okay, so this is a story I never thought I'd have to tell, but here we are. I don't even know where to start, but I guess it's with betrayal. Big time betrayal. It wasn't from some random stranger, though. It was from my own sister. Yeah, you heard that right, my sister. My name's Emily, and I've always thought I had a good sense of who I could trust. Family is supposed to be the one thing you can count on, right? But clearly, I was wrong. Sarah, my older sister, was always my rock. We were always close, talking about everything, laughing about the dumbest things, and sharing pretty much every secret. That's why I never saw this coming. I mean, I should've, but I was so blinded by everything else in my life that I just didn't see the warning signs. So, let me back up a bit. A few months ago, everything seemed pretty perfect. I was in a committed relationship with Liam, the guy the first thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with. We had our ups and downs, sure, but nothing serious. We'd been together for over a year, and I honestly thought I knew everything about him. I had no reason to doubt him. He was my person. And Sarah? Well, she had always been a bit of a flirt. But I thought, she's my sister, she wouldn't do anything to hurt me. Right? Wrong. Things started to feel off. Liam was acting weird. He'd cancel plans last minute, get super distant, and start coming up with lame excuses about being too tired or busy with work. And I'd just brush it off, thinking maybe I was just being paranoid. But something felt wrong, and I couldn't shake the feeling. Then came the day that everything fell apart. I was on my way home early from work, and as soon as I opened the door, I saw it, Liam and Sarah. They were sitting on my couch, holding hands like it was normal, like I didn't exist. My heart stopped. I couldn't even speak at first. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, staring at them in disbelief. Sarah, my own sister, had been seeing Liam behind my back. And they weren't even ashamed. They acted like nothing was wrong. I remember Sarah saying, "Oh, Em, we didn't think you'd be home this early." As if that somehow made everything okay. That was the moment everything changed. I don't know what was worse, the fact that they were together or the fact that they didn't feel the need to hide it. I stood there for a minute, just in shock, and then I realized something. This wasn't just a betrayal of my relationship with Liam. It was a betrayal of everything I had ever known about my sister. I wasn't about to let this slide, not for a second, and that's when I decided, if they thought they could get away with it, they were wrong. I've always been the type of person who believes in second chances. Even when things get tough, I try to see the good in people. So, when I look back at the time I spent with Sarah and Liam before everything went down, I can't help but think about all the signs I missed. Sarah and I had a pretty typical childhood, sibling rivalry, messy fights over who gets the bigger room, who gets the last piece of pizza. But underneath it all, we were best friends. As we grew older, our bond just became stronger. We shared everything, our hopes, our dreams, and even our fears. And then there was Liam. I met him through a mutual friend at a party, and at first, he seemed like a catch. Charming, funny, and thoughtful. We clicked instantly, and it didn't take long before we started dating. Things were good, really good. I remember telling Sarah all about Liam, how he made me laugh, how we had the best time together, how I felt like I could be myself around him. She was happy for me, or so I thought. But now I realize that's when things started to shift. Looking back, there were little moments I should have paid attention to, things that should have raised a red flag. Like when Sarah started spending more time with Liam. I know, it sounds weird, but she'd call him up to hang out, even when I wasn't around. At first, I thought nothing of it. She was just being friendly. But it wasn't just that. It was the way she'd talk about him, as if they had this secret bond I didn't even know about. I brushed it off, telling myself I was just being paranoid. She was my sister, after all. She would never do anything like that to me. But then came the moment that would change everything. I was out of town visiting family, and when I came back, Liam and Sarah were acting different. I didn't think much of it at first, but something was off. They were avoiding eye contact, acting a little too nervous around me. I should have pushed it then, but I was too caught up in my own little world to notice. I just thought they were being weird because I'd been gone for a few days. Then, when I caught them together on my couch, everything clicked into place. The distance between Liam and me, the weirdness between Sarah and me, it all made sense. They'd been sneaking around, lying to my face, and I had been too trusting to see it. I had believed in them, believed they would never betray me like this. But I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. It's funny how you can live your whole life thinking you know someone, and then in an instant, they become strangers. I couldn't understand why Sarah would do this to me. Why she would betray me in such a cruel way. We were family, and family doesn't do that. But the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. How could they just play me like this? How could they pretend nothing was wrong? I was done being the victim in this story. I wasn't going to sit back and let Sarah and Liam think they could get away with what they did. No, I needed to take control of this situation. And in that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to confront them. I was going to expose everything. Once I had the truth, I knew I had to act fast. The anger was still simmering inside me, and while part of me wanted to go straight to Sarah and Liam and scream at them, I knew that wouldn't get me anywhere. It wouldn't give me the satisfaction I wanted. No, I needed something more, something that would leave them both reeling. I wasn't just going to confront them, I was going to make them pay. The first step was gathering evidence. I had already seen enough, but I wanted to make sure I had everything I needed to expose them. I started keeping tabs on Liam and Sarah, looking for anything I could use. I didn't have to follow them for long before I noticed something. Every time I called Liam, he'd go quiet for a second before answering. I'd ask him about his day, and he'd act like everything was fine, but there was something in his voice that made me suspicious. He was always too busy, too distracted, but I never put two and two together until now. Then there was Sarah. She hadn't called me once since I found out. It was like she disappeared into thin air, probably to avoid facing me. But what did she think was going to happen? I wasn't going to let her off the hook that easily. I wanted to know everything, every little detail of what had been going on between them. I had to know what kind of plan they had, if they thought they could just walk away from me without consequences. I knew I had to confront them separately at first. If I went in all guns blazing, it would give them the chance to make up some lie to cover their tracks. I needed them to think they were still in control, just for a little longer. So, I played it cool. I texted Liam first, telling him we needed to talk. He agreed to meet up, acting all concerned, like he hadn't just been caught in a lie. I couldn't believe how calm he was, how he still thought he could lie his way out of this. The night before our meeting, I did some digging. I went through old messages, photos, and social media posts, anything that could help me put the pieces together. And that's when I found something. A photo, a selfie of Sarah and Liam together, posted just a few weeks ago. It was taken at a restaurant I knew we'd all been to together, one of our favorite places. Except this time, they were smiling, sitting much too close, with their arms around each other. The date on the photo was the same night I'd been at my mom's house for a family dinner. They'd been together while I was left out, in the dark. It was infuriating, but this photo wasn't just a slap in the face, it was my ticket to exposing them. I knew Sarah would be too ashamed to confront me head-on, but Liam? Liam would think I was just going to forgive him, and that's where I was wrong. The next day, we met at a coffee shop. I walked in, calm and collected, like nothing was wrong. Liam was already sitting at a table, nervously stirring his coffee. He looked up when I walked in, giving me that soft smile I had once adored. But now, it only made me want to gag. "Hey," he said, trying to be all casual. "What's going on? You said we needed to talk." I didn't waste any time. I slid the phone across the table, showing him the picture of him and Sarah. "You're going to explain this to me," I said, my voice ice cold. Liam's face turned pale. He looked at the photo and then back at me, trying to make some excuse, but I wasn't having it. I wasn't going to sit there and let him manipulate me like he used to. I wanted him to know that this wasn't just some petty argument, this was the end. "I don't know what you want me to say," Liam stammered. "It's not what it looks like, Em." "Really?" I replied, raising an eyebrow. "Because it looks pretty damn clear to me." I could see the panic in his eyes. He wasn't expecting me to come at him with evidence. He thought he could talk his way out of this. But I wasn't going to let him. "I know everything, Liam," I said quietly. "I know about Sarah, I know about the lies. And I'm done. I'm not going to play the victim anymore. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you've done." Liam tried to backpedal, pleading with me to understand. But the more he talked, the angrier I got. I didn't want his apologies, I wanted his downfall. I stood up, ready to leave, but not before dropping the real bombshell. "You're not the only one who's been lying." His confusion was written all over his face. He didn't understand yet, but he would. The days that followed were a blur. I couldn't focus on anything except one thing: taking down Sarah and Liam. They had no idea what was coming, and that was exactly how I wanted it. I spent my time meticulously putting my plan into motion. I was done being the victim. Now, it was their turn to feel what I had felt: the pain of betrayal, the sting of being used. I knew I needed to get Sarah involved next. She was the one who really thought she'd gotten away with everything. I wasn't just going to expose Liam. No, I wanted both of them to suffer. I wanted Sarah to feel the weight of her actions, to realize that family wasn't something you could just throw away for your own selfish desires. I didn't waste any time. I knew Sarah would try to avoid me, so I made sure I didn't give her a chance to dodge the confrontation. I texted her, asking to meet up. She hesitated at first, but when I told her I knew everything about her and Liam, she agreed to meet at a park near our childhood home. I had a feeling she thought I'd come to beg for answers, maybe even apologize for the way things were going. But what she didn't realize was that I wasn't there for closure. I was there for revenge. When she arrived, I could see the guilt in her eyes before she even said a word. She tried to play it cool, acting like nothing had happened, but I could see right through her. I wasn't going to let her lie her way out of this. "You think I didn't know, don't you?" I asked, my voice dripping with bitterness. Sarah shifted uncomfortably but didn't say anything. She was too scared to speak, and I loved it. I knew the whole time, I continued, leaning in, making sure she could hear the anger in my voice. "And now, it's your turn to feel the truth. You think you can just take what's mine and get away with it? Well, you're wrong." She blinked rapidly, her face paling as I dropped the bomb. I pulled out my phone and showed her the messages, texts between Liam and me, where he'd confessed everything. How they'd been seeing each other behind my back, how he'd promised her things he'd never promised me. But that wasn't enough. No, I wasn't done yet. "I also contacted your boss, Sarah," I said calmly. "You know, the one who doesn't know you've been having secret meetings with Liam during work hours? I sent them the emails and texts between the two of you. So don't think this is just a family matter anymore. It's professional." Her face turned white as she stared at the phone in my hand, reading the incriminating messages that exposed everything. The shock was clear. She had no idea I was capable of this. And as I watched her break down, I felt a sense of satisfaction I hadn't felt in months. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I stood up, letting her stew in her shame for a moment. Then, I turned to leave. As I walked away, I said one final thing. "Oh, and don't bother trying to fix this. Liam doesn't want you. He doesn't even care. He only used you. I'll make sure everyone knows it too." I had done it. I had exposed their lies, destroyed their little secret, and made them pay for what they did. I wasn't just walking away, I was walking away victorious. The days after everything blew up were a mix of relief and satisfaction. I could finally breathe without the weight of betrayal crushing my chest. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control over my life again. I wasn't just some victim in this story anymore. I was the one who had taken charge, who had made sure Sarah and Liam felt the consequences of their actions. For Liam, things didn't go as planned. He thought he could slide by with his charm, try to smooth things over, but I made sure that wasn't going to happen. I told all our friends the truth. I didn't hide behind my pain or embarrassment. I wanted them to know exactly who Liam was, someone who could betray a person so completely, without a second thought. And just like that, his reputation with our circle of friends started to crumble. People started to distance themselves from him, realizing that he wasn't the guy they thought he was. The support he once had? Gone. As for Sarah, her world was completely shattered. I had already made sure her professional life was going to be affected. After I sent her boss those emails and texts, they began an internal investigation. I didn't have to do much. The proof was all there. Within days, Sarah was pulled into a meeting with HR, and I knew it was just a matter of time before they let her go. She had thought she could destroy me and take everything, but in the end, it was her own career that was on the line. The job she thought would be a safe haven for her after her affair with Liam? Gone. I wasn't sure which was more satisfying, the fact that Liam had lost his friends or the fact that Sarah had lost her career. But either way, they were both paying for what they'd done. Months passed. I moved on. It wasn't that I'd forgotten about the betrayal. It wasn't something you just forget, but I had found a new peace. I took time for myself, focusing on my career, hanging out with friends who had supported me, and rediscovering what it meant to be truly happy again. I traveled, did things I never had the time for when I was caught up in Liam and Sarah's mess. I realized that all that hurt and anger I'd carried had been weighing me down for too long, and I had to let go to move forward. Every now and then, I'd hear about Sarah. Rumors about her failed job search or her failed attempts to get back in touch with people who had once been her friends. It didn't faze me anymore. In fact, it almost felt like sweet karma. She had lost everything. A job, her reputation, and most of all, her sister's trust. As for Liam, well, I found out he tried to reach out to apologize a few times, but by then, I was done. I didn't even bother to respond. He had made his choice, and now he had to live with it. What I learned through all of this was that I was stronger than I had ever known. I didn't need Liam or Sarah. I didn't need anyone who wasn't willing to respect me, and I wasn't going to waste my time on people who didn't value loyalty. So, here I am now, wiser, stronger, and fully in control of my life. I've let go of the past and moved forward, because in the end, revenge wasn't about making them suffer. It was about reclaiming my life, my peace, and my happiness. And now, I'm free. Story 2. In 2023, my boyfriend and I planned to buy a house together, one that needed a ton of work. Since he was dealing with some legal stuff, we decided that I would take out a conventional loan in my name, and the house would also be solely under my name for now. Our plan was to split the initial payment, like down payment and closing costs and future renovation costs, 50-50. He really wanted a house that needed work. He likes projects, but I didn't really want that kind of responsibility. I knew we didn't really have the time for a project, and I couldn't help him much, physically, as he was planning on doing a lot of the renovation himself, but he assured me he knew that and he just wanted me to support him. I even told him multiple times that I would rather use my VA loan to buy a move-in ready home with zero down payment. But he insisted I should save my VA loan for later, and that all I needed to do was support him. The week we were supposed to close on the house, we had a huge fight, and I was sure I was done with him. By that point, everything was already set up with the lawyer, and I felt stuck. I thought I had no choice but to go through with the purchase. So, I signed the papers. The loan and house were in my name as planned, and since I assumed I was doing this alone, I covered the down payment and closing costs myself. My plan was to apply for grants, fix what I could, and sell the house. But then we got back together, and he started helping with renovations. He put about $30,000 into the house between money and labor, but the house still wasn't livable. We weren't living there, and we couldn't rent it out either. Over time, we had several arguments about the house, and one major issue being that he was working on a house that wasn't even in his name. This was brought up multiple times by him when he was in a foul mood. Again, he was still going through his legal stuff, so I told him I could either pay him back the $30,000 once I sold the house, which I really wanted to do back then because the house was far from livable and I felt like I was wasting my money on mortgage and taxes, or we could put his name on the deed after his legal issues were resolved if he agreed to split the mortgage and future maintenance costs. But he refused. He didn't want to be responsible for the mortgage or any maintenance. I even paid a lawyer to draft an agreement stating that once his legal issues were resolved, he would officially own half the house as long as he agreed to cover half the mortgage and maintenance, which seemed fair to me. But he wouldn't sign because he didn't want that financial responsibility. Fast forward to 2025, and the house is still sitting there because neither of us have time or money to work on it. I've been the one covering the mortgage and utilities since it's in my name. Recently, there was some water damage in the house, and the insurance is likely going to cover it. There's a high chance I could end up with a completely renovated home due to the damage. And also recently, I got approved for over $30,000, $50K worth of home repair grants. So by the end of 2025, I will most likely have a brand new house. Now, he wants me to sell the house after the renovation is complete and buy a new one with him. But I don't want to sell, I'd rather rent it out because it's going to be a brand new house. And even if I do sell, I don't think it's fair for him to expect 50% of the profit. The most I have agreed to paying him was the $30,000 he put in. But now he wants half of the total profit, which could be around $130,000 after all the insurance and grant money goes into fixing it up. I told him I'd still honor our original agreement and pay him back the $30,000, but he's upset and claims I used him. The truth is, I never asked him to put in work on the house, he did it on his own. Of course, I appreciate what he did, which is why I want to pay him back what he put in. But I don't think it's fair for him to demand half the profit when he wasn't even willing to pay half the mortgage, which was less than $500 for him, or be half responsible for maintenance. What's the fair thing to do here? Does he deserve 50% of the profit?